Hi everybody, my name is Daniel Salt and welcome to part 4 of our saxophone video series. Today we're talking about low notes, and this is a video I'm really excited to make because low notes are one of those things that every time I work with saxophone players anywhere, they all have trouble with low notes. And I love working on low notes because they're extremely simple if done right, but they're often really overcomplicated, both by the students and by their band directors or teachers sometimes. And in fact, in my opinion, our worst teaching mistake when it comes to teaching saxophone players is low notes. For years and years and years, decades upon decades upon decades, we have been teaching low notes the same way and an incorrect way. One of the biggest culprits of that is when a teacher says to a student, drop your jaw to play a low note. And that is one of the biggest mistakes that you can make as a saxophone teacher to get your students to play low notes. I was taught that way, and I didn't learn the right way to play low notes until I went to college and had a real saxophone professor sit down with me and talk about it and why it doesn't work. But the bottom line is, there aren't professional saxophone players going around playing concerts all over the world who are dropping their jaw to play low notes. It's just not the case. The best saxophone players in the world don't do that. And so if that's so wrong, it's kind of hard to accept that could be the wrong thing, especially if you're a band director and you've been saying it for a long time. It can be hard to let go. Or if you're a student who's been told that by their band director for years, or maybe multiple band directors for years, it can be really, really hard to let that go. But I think I know why people say it. I don't have research or anything, it's just kind of me thinking about it, but I have an idea as to why. And I think it's because when saxophones were first starting to be really, really popular in the mid sort of 1900s, a lot of clarinet players were interested in saxophone, and that's where a lot of saxophone players came from, was clarinet sections. And so if you're a clarinet player and you're playing the saxophone and you're used to playing it like you would play a clarinet, that might have worked, that drop your jaw thing, because the clarinet and saxophone embouchures are different. But for somebody who doesn't play clarinet, it's totally the wrong thing to tell them. So if you're a clarinet player, it might help them be a better saxophone player to do that. But if you just started on saxophone, for example, then there's no reason to do that. And I think that's where it got started. So let's talk about why that is. Why do we not drop our jaw to play low notes? So on any instrument, the fundamental note should be the easiest note to play. Whatever like the key of the instrument is, or whatever the lowest note is. So on an alto saxophone, that's usually a B flat. So if you close all the keys, you get a B flat. That's the fundamental note of the instrument. And brass players and band directors know what I mean when I say fundamental. And so if we can play that, then theoretically we should be able to play all of the other notes. But a lot of times when people go for that low B flat, they end up getting other sounds. Things like that. And so what's happening when you have a student, or if you're trying to play a low note and you're getting sounds like that, or just any other sounds, is that you're actually playing what are called overtones above that low B flat that you're trying to do. And overtones are the way that brass instruments work. So if you know brass instruments well, you know you can play many notes with the same fingers. And that's because you're always playing overtones. And the saxophone can do the same thing. So if I put down my low B flat, and you're gonna have to trust me here because of my camera setup, but I'm not gonna move my fingers. But I'll play a low B flat and I'll play a bunch of other notes, and my fingers are on that B flat the whole time. And we could keep going. So all of those notes on only a single fingering. Right? So if you are playing your low notes and you're getting some of those sounds, I encourage you to explore it a little bit and see what kind of other sounds you can make. And you'll start to build a vocabulary of what you have to do in order to get that low note to come out every time you want it, that low B flat in this case. And if you want to, you can even practice and play some like bugle calls as if you were a trumpet player. And I'm not super good at it, but I'll try. So you can play some of those without moving any of your fingers at all. All right, so if you're a student struggling with low notes, experiment with overtones and eventually you'll figure out how to play that low B flat every single time. And you can start experimenting at different dynamic levels and things like that. And then you can do low B, the same thing, and low C, and low C sharp, and low D. And it works for all of those notes all the time. So that's something as a student you can work on to help get yourself used to playing those low notes. If you're a band director, I guess if you're a student too, you should know this. The embouchure for low notes is, and this is sort of the unbelievable part for a lot of people. So brace yourself, I guess, for this one. The fundamental embouchure for the saxophone does not change between our lowest notes and our highest notes. So between that low B flat and that high F sharp, for example, there's no embouchure difference whatsoever. And I know that sounds crazy, I'll say it again, there's no embouchure difference between a low B flat and a high F sharp. We do the same thing if it's right for every single note on our instrument, with the exception of the altissimo register. So developing that is a huge task for saxophone players, and one of the best ways to do it is with that overtone exercise. So if you are a saxophone player and you're struggling with low notes, the first thing you need to do is forget the drop your jaw. Don't do it. If you play a low B flat the same way that you play your middle B flat or your high B flat, you'll get a low B flat. And if you don't, you'll get an overtone that you can play with, and you'll start to discover what that embouchure really should be. Because if you can get a low B flat like every single time, you'll be able to play every note on your instrument, and it will be gorgeous, and it will be more or less in tune. Although we're going to talk about some intonation inconsistencies in the next videos. All right? So encourage your students to experiment with overtones. Stop telling them to drop their jaw, and instead know that there is a single embouchure for all the notes on the saxophone. And to prove that to you, I'll do a slur from low B flat to high F sharp, and that won't be possible if there are embouchure changes. And it's no problem for me. I can do it instantly because I have that embouchure set up the right way. So no matter the note, we have the same fundamental embouchure. All right? If you work on that, you can get some of those low notes, and you're doing pretty good on it. You're ready for our next video.